Here to enlighten us is Tayab Ali, Director of the International Center of Justice for Palestinians, or ICPJ. Welcome to MEE Live, Tayab.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our first question is how great a threat does this news pose to international law and indeed to any chance of justice for victims of Netanyahu's warfare?
I mean, the first thing to consider is what this means for Hungary and where it puts Hungary in terms of its journey through history. But there's no doubt in saying that Hungary's withdrawal from the ICC is without a doubt a serious blow to international law. It definitely undermines a court designed to hold even the most powerful individuals accountable. For victims of war crimes like those in Gaza, this move sends a clear message. If Hungary and some countries in the world will always be prepared to protect suspected war criminals, to shield suspected war criminals from justice. And it's important to also put this in its context. Just because Hungary has decided to take this step is probably more likely to damage its own reputation and itself. It certainly will not prevent accountability processes across the world. The framework for international law and accountability is broader than just one court, and Hungary's attempt to sabotage accountability, I think, won't succeed in the long term.
I suppose, though, there's a risk that other countries might follow Hungary's example, if not just departing from the ICC, just generally, rolling out invitations and undermining this arrest warrant. Germany, for example, comes to my mind, given that the incoming Chancellor Friedrich Merz has already invited Netanyahu. Is this a risk?
Yeah, it's without a doubt a risk that other countries will follow Hungary's example. And in a way, it's an important example for countries to face at the moment. What do they stand for? Do they stand on the side of victims, or do they bow to political pressure? I mean, Hungary may have taken the first step, but the world is definitely watching to see who follows and who holds the line. But something that lawyers like myself have known for a very long time is that the international international legal framework has often been used by Western states to promote and push their foreign policy objectives and target countries in the global south and in particular in Africa. And so what we're seeing in reality at the moment is the truth coming out for the first time in decades, where we're seeing people and states, whether or not they actually understand principles of justice and will protect the rule of law, or well, in actual fact, when the rule of law comes to face them, they will turn away from it. And Hungary is the first example of that. Now, we'll see what Germany does. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if Germany decided to take that same suit, but that will instruct other countries across the world that they will have to step up. And I think we'll see that happening, as we saw happen with South Africa at the ICJ with their triggering of the Genocide Convention against Israel.
That's interesting. I wonder if we will see it. I hope we would see it. But if the spotlight is now on other ICC state leaders, who may wish to protect the court's jurisdiction, how will or how should these leaders react? As it stands, we haven't seen much said by Keir Starmer, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This is definitely a moment for moral leadership. And leaders like our own Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who claim to uphold the rule of law, who in fact are experts in international law. He himself is a barrister who practiced as a human rights barrister in the United Kingdom and across the world, in fact, actually litigated in court on issues such as genocide. Well, it's time for these leaders to step up. Did they mean it when they stood for the rule of law and justice? Did they mean it when they advocated these principles in their private practice? And as prime ministers, are they going to abandon this? The silence and ambiguity will only embolden states like Hungary to continue to dismantle international norms. The UK it's imperative that the UK reaffirms that no one is above the law, not even close allies such as Israel. Anything less would be a betrayal of the principles of the ICC.
We'll have to wait and see if Starmer and other ICC state leaders do speak out. Turning to Hungary itself now, we heard from an activist inside Hungary today that criticism of this ruling has been silenced or silent, but Orbán's regime has faced continual protests and is facing protests at the moment due to previous and ongoing crackdowns on free speech, judicial independence, minority rights, as well as its perceived alignment with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who also faces an ICC arrest warrant. What does Hungary's departure from the ICC say about rights and freedoms within the country?
Well, what's interesting is since Prime Minister Netanyahu, or suspected war criminal Netanyahu, announced that he was traveling this week to Hungary, we did speak with, as part of the work that we do at ICJP, with a number of activists and lawyers and very senior lawyers, in fact, in Hungary. And we had the same response. People are very angry, in fact, or some people are very angry about the stance that Hungary's government has taken with regards to protecting people like Netanyahu, but they're frightened to speak out. In fact, we were working with lawyers in Hungary on a legal case at the moment with regards to Netanyahu, and later on today we'll be sending a letter to the Hungarian authorities with regards to their obligations within the ICC. Even though they've announced they've left the ICC, they still have obligations which attach in law, and actually domestic Hungarian law, to the Hungarian authorities, which basically mean that they should arrest and surrender Netanyahu to the ICC. But these individuals were very frightened to let it be known that they had these views and they had these feelings and they wanted to protect the rule of law, and they didn't want to protect a suspected war criminal within their jurisdiction. And that's really worrying. And so whether it's silencing journalists, targeting minorities, or now withdrawing from the ICC, these are all steps in a broader effort to insulate the Hungarian regime from accountability. It tells us that Hungary is not just turning away from international norms, it's actually turning away from democracy itself.
Wow. And to the ICC itself now. Now, when the ICC issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant, many European and US political figures condemned the court and accused it of bias. But interestingly, Netanyahu and Gallant are the first Western-aligned leaders to have ever faced ICC arrest warrants, and over 90% of defendants come from Africa and Asia. I wonder, what does the defiance of European and US leaders tell us about the global balance of justice?
Well, it tells us that when you get a person into a courtroom, when you manage to litigate, there is a risk to the aggressor, to the oppressor, that the rule of law and justice will be done. If that wasn't the case, then those people that shield war criminals, those people that participate in war crimes, those people that are complicit in them wouldn't be so frightened and wouldn't attack so aggressively institutions like the ICC or the ICJ, and they wouldn't try so hard to prevent people like Benjamin Netanyahu going before them. I mean, if Viktor Orban and the Hungarian authorities and Trump himself think that there is no issue for Netanyahu, then why not surrender to the ICC? Why not have a trial? Why not let independent judges adjudicate on that issue? And the truth is that they will not put themselves in that position because they fear that justice will be done. The truth will be seen, the truth will be told, and people will be prosecuted and convicted. And so you can see by the actions that, for example, the United States have taken on the ICC by issuing sanctions, by attacking the institution, by attacking its officers, that clearly there is a fear of this. But, the process in terms of accountability is wider than the ICC. And at the ICJP, we're working very much within the international framework with countries across the globe in order to make sure that attacks on individual institutions, be it the United Nations, be it UNRWA, be it the ICJ, effectively fall away and become meaningless. There's a lot more work to be done, but I think accountability is on its way.
Well, speaking of accountability and of your work at ICPJ, maybe you can tell people what routes remain for Palestinians in particular who may hope to see justice for these alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. I'm aware that the ICPJ, for example, recently launched an initiative to, secure exactly this goal. Please take the chance to tell us a bit about Global 195.
Sure, I'm grateful for that. And so at ICJP, we launched something called the Justice for Gaza campaign at the beginning in October 23, and that was collating evidence. Now, we've got to a position now where we've collected a vast library of primary, credible, criminal law level or criminal standard evidence, which tells a narrative about really serious, horrific war crimes and crimes against humanity perpetrated against the Palestinian people by Israel. And as the second part of the Justice for Gaza project, we launched, as you say, the Global 195 initiative. And this is to safeguard for precisely the type of thing that Hungary has done. We couldn't take the risk that one single institution, the ICC, would be the institution that would resolve the problem. Of course, it should. And of course, the ICC prosecutors issued arrest warrants. And if people live up to their obligations at the ICC, justice will be done. But we can't take the risk to rely on that. And so we've developed a global network of lawyers, and the ambition is to have a legal team in all 195 countries in the world, yes, and including Israel, and have those legal teams prepare complaints and provide them to local law enforcement agencies based on the evidence that we've collected. But not only that, where the local law enforcement agency is not prepared to act responsibly and initiate accountability processes or prosecutions, then individual legal teams in each of those states will apply for private arrest warrants where possible in each of those jurisdictions and seek private prosecutions of suspected Israeli war criminals and those that are complicit in that activity.
Amazing work. And I apologize, I believe I said ICPJ. It is, of course, ICJP. And anyone who wants to learn more about this initiative, you can visit icjpalestine.com and keep up to date with developments at middleeasteye.net. Tayab Ali, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.